is a First Coast News special report.
We're going to interrupt national coverage for just a moment here today to bring you some local information. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alan Janae.
And I'm Jeannie Blaylock. It's been a tragic day across the nation. Horrendous attacks of terrorism brought down the World Trade Center, as you know. People all over the world watched in horror as the Twin Towers collapsed. 50,000 people work in the World Trade Center every day.
At least 4 planes have crashed. American Airlines says its 2 hijacked planes were carrying a total of 156 people. 2 United airliners carrying a total of 110 passengers also crashed. 1 outside Pittsburgh. All 4 were going to California. Here is the very latest locally. Jacksonville International Airport is on its highest level of alert. All outbound flights are grounded. Runways are being kept open for incoming flights.
Duval County schools are on heightened awareness, as they're calling it, but classes are still going on. I've talked with school officials. They say many parents are calling. If you want to pick up your child from school early, you must work with your individual school. Also, the Florida-Georgia Blood Alliance is urging people to donate blood. And a news conference is expected in just a few moments with Mayor John Delaney, Sheriff Nat Glover, Fire Chief Ray Alfred. It's at the Emergency Operations Center, and we'll join that news conference as soon as it just begins.
Yeah, here are these points that Jeannie just went over. We want to go back over them for you, just so you know, and you can remain aware of the situation here in our area. Duval schools on heightened alert. Florida-Georgia Blood Alliance is prepared for donations. Perhaps these can help. There's going to be an enormous need for blood, certainly to our north, and also a news conference scheduled locally. The JIA on its highest level of alert. You do know probably by now that domestic flights in the United States have been grounded, and outbound flights are grounded, of course, as well, along with all of that.
Our news partner, the Florida Times Union, has issued this. You can see the big headline here, Terror. It is an extra special edition giving some facts and pictures of what we know so far. Many, many questions remain. Who did it? What is the United States going to do about it? It's going to take a long time to sift through this information.
All right,
let's go now to the news conference with Mayor John Delaney.
I appreciate everybody coming today, and clearly this is a moment of national tragedy that probably is only rivaled by the Pearl Harbor bombing back in 1941. Our thoughts obviously are with the people in New York and Washington and Chicago, and of course we know they have families and friends all across the country, including probably a number in Jacksonville. Clearly the targets appear to be federal or national in scope. We just got off the phone with the Emergency Operations Center statewide in Tallahassee that essentially they've got about the same condition we are here in Jacksonville. There does not appear to be credible threats to those of us in Florida, but obviously we must proceed very, very cautiously over the next few hours and few days. We obviously want to show respect to what has gone on in those other 3 cities, but we believe our responsibility, obviously, as a community here is not to panic, to not give in to the terrorists. This is what they want us to do, and to try to preserve a degree of normalcy. With that, we'd like to go ahead and present what the state of the city is and what our plans are right now. We'll first call on the sheriff to give an update there. Sheriff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, let me just say the objective of the terrorists to disrupt government to the point where government will have to react and the citizens of the community will have to feel the reaction of government. And to some degree, there have been some success in that area. Although we've had no credible threats here in Jacksonville that we feel like is so legitimate that it causes us to go beyond what we call reasonable alert. When we look at the federal buildings here in Jacksonville, the GSA and U.S. Marshals have certainly enhanced security, but the federal courthouse remains open. We're in the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office has gone to somewhat of an alert that it requires us to be in a position to react in case we do have a situation. We are putting our substations on alert. We're making certain all of our police cars are gassed up, and we have some reserve police cars. In addition to, we put our SWAT team on alert. We've instructed our detectives that we wanted to see them in uniforms just to make certain that we present the numbers out there in case we have a situation, and we've enhanced building security over at PMB as well. We are X-raying packages that come in there just to make sure. We've had a number of bomb threats around the city, and of course, we did have a suspicious package at the South Trust Bank at 1 Riverside Tower, and but that was a briefcase. That there was no legitimacy to that. It was not a bona fide incident, and we're thankful for that. So we're certainly maintaining a posture where we respect what has gone on around the country, but certainly we don't see any reason to be alarmed at this particular point.
To go on to the next step to talk about the airport and the Red Cross numbers, we'll call up Fire Chief Ray Alfred. I will mention that, of course, Ray Alfred served as the fire chief in Washington, D.C., so he's familiar with that area and also with what we need to do here. So with that, to Ray Alfred.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly, we're saddened by what has happened in New York and Washington. As for Jacksonville, our department is at a heightened state of awareness and alert, certainly. We have a metropolitan medical response system. Our team is the core of the fire department. We have about 104 members who are specially trained, and we are, in fact, on standby in the event that we have to go to New York or assist in any way in any place. I have canceled all of our personnel leave. Anyone who has not been granted leave will not be granted leave. The Red Cross has notified us that they have established a family well-being call center. That number is 358-8091. For anyone who has relatives in New York and are concerned about their well-being, they can call that number again, 358-8091. We've talked to JIA. They have informed us that there were still about 300 to 400 people in the airport. It's going to take them about an hour and a half to completely get everybody out of there and eventually shut the airport down. They have scheduled chartered buses to take people to their destination, and that is happening at this point. The EOC is at level 1. Chip Patterson is here and will be here. His staff will be monitoring our situation upstairs on the 4th floor in the Emergency Operations Center. For anyone that's interested and wants some information from us in that regards, 630-2472. Certainly they can call us. We can update them on where we are. Thank you.
Also like to add on the airport, just before we came down, the word we have received that we've twice confirmed now is that every airplane that left Jacksonville this morning has safely landed. So for those that had family members that were on a flight leaving in Jacksonville or were concerned, every one of those planes has safely landed. Tonight is a scheduled City Council meeting, and we'd now like to ask City Council President Matt Carlucci to report on what his intention is now. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have scheduled a regular City Council meeting tonight. We're in the process of trying to make an appropriate decision about that and using all sensitivity in that process. We will be meeting in Conference Room A sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock this afternoon to make our announcement with regards to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. To recap, basically the federal buildings are remaining open in Jacksonville, as is the federal courthouse. The South Trust building that had a concern with a bomb turned out to not be legitimate. The airport is now beginning to charter buses to take people to their destinations. All planes are safe out of Jacksonville. The Red Cross has a phone number established for those that are obviously inquiring about family members up in the other 3 cities or on the airlines. As to city buildings, we have made the decision not to shut any city buildings down. Similarly with the county courthouse, it will remain open. The schools, we've had discussions with John Fryer that I have this morning, and then also just confirmed before coming down. The plans for the school system are to remain open. Parents can pick their children up if they have a concern pursuant to normal procedures to go and check your child out of school. School buses will be able to get into the Navy bases, so children will be able to get home, and the intent as of about 1:30 is to have our school system and all public operations still as normal tomorrow. As to the Navy, spoke with Admiral Gaudio. Obviously, Admiral Gaudio reiterates that there does not appear to be, from their information, a reason to be concerned civically, although the Navy has obviously extremely tightened up security on those bases. Non-essential personnel have been requested and directed to leave, and obviously the security is at a very significant level on that particular base. I will state, though, that as I guess one would expect from the Navy, that they're used to these kinds of things, and they were calm. The tone was calm as it came from there. At approximately 12:50, we did receive a bomb threat at City Hall. I think it is fair to say that under normal circumstances, the wording of this threat we would have ignored, but for the fact of the events of today. So approximately 9 minutes later, about 1 o'clock, we did ask the people in City Hall to, much like a fire drill, to go outside for approximately an hour. The sheriff's personnel are now going through the building, and we anticipate going back into the building at 2 o'clock. As the sheriff pointed out to me upstairs, you don't even really want to acknowledge these because it encourages more. Today is unique. Over the next few days, we do not anticipate that kind of a response unless we do receive heightened suspicious activity. I think the sense is that today is the day when the attacks will be. Obviously, the terrorists would expect tremendously increased security immediately after the knowledge of this happens. So the best instinct is the worst is over. However, we know that we've got to keep our eyes open and be vigilant. So at all of our public buildings, all of the federal facilities, security is up. And the report from Tallahassee is that they're obviously in a little different situation with all the state capitol buildings over there. The blood banks, many people are asking what they can do. Obviously, in this sort of scenario, it frankly is the kind of things that tend to bring the country together, and we first turn to prayer on that, and obviously we're going to hear a lot about that in the next few days. The blood banks would probably be something more directly that some people could do to really feel that they're stepping out, and the blood banks have informed us they'll remain open until 9 o'clock tonight. There's obviously going to be an awful lot of need for that in the other three cities. And with that, if you have any questions, we'll go ahead and toss it out to you. Yeah,
Shirk with First Coast News. Some of our reporters in the field are finding that some of the gas stations are already increasing their gas prices. Can you respond to that? The sheriff already said that obviously his fleet has gone to gas up, so obviously a lot of folks in the community may be doing the same thing with their cars.
Yeah, there is a state law basically on price gouging when you have an emergency. That is the first we've heard from that. That is something that we are allowed to take action on legally. The state attorney, I think, as you recall, during the hurricane 2 years ago, Harry Shorstein was over, said they will take a look at that personally, and obviously that's something that's very easy to prove after the fact, and we'll take a look at that.
Some buildings like the Modus building, high-rise buildings in downtown have been evacuated, or workers have been allowed to leave. Is the city basically doing it as a business-by-business basis, or have you suggested any recommendation to them in terms of clearing out the buildings?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the fire chief and the sheriff and I and the council president, I think, confirmed that we are not ordering the evacuation of buildings. That's obviously left up to the people in the buildings. It is understandable on a day like today that if you're in a high-rise and you see those images on TV, I think that the fear and the balance you want is you really don't want to give in to the terrorists. That's what they want. They want this panic. They want government shut down. They want public buildings and public business shut down. And that's why what we're waiting for is a credible threat or a credible concern. And we're not getting any indications of that in the Jacksonville area and in the Florida area.
How confident can you be that if something would happen here, that the response would be adequate?
Well, that's what we prepare for. I will say that two of the things that the sheriff and the fire chief brought was some heightened training for terrorist activity, and I think the phrase is weapons of mass destruction. So the departments have been training in that area. The problem is some of that stuff's after the fact, and obviously if you have an airplane on a suicide mission, there's not a heck of a lot you're going to be able to do.
Being a coastal city, being a military town, are we considered a possible target? Pittsburgh, of all places.
Yeah, I think obviously they were looking to try to get to some of the major northeastern cities where they can get to some of those to Washington, New York. And yeah, the military sites obviously would be the larger concern because we have a big military presence here. Again, I'll repeat what Admiral Gaudio said, that they similarly do not have credible evidence that we are a site or a target. That doesn't mean that everybody can ignore it, and that's not what we're doing. Obviously, we have to be heightened, but people should not panic. Be concerned and be focused, but don't panic.
Has the city received any instructions from the federal government or authorities about what to do, how to go about preparing?
And Chip or Chief, can you comment on that? Chip's got us shaking his head now.
No, we have not. Let me go back to your question about awareness of training. As you know, Jacksonville several years ago was identified as one of 27 cities across the country to receive special terrorism training. So to the extent that we've received all that training, all of our folks in the fire department are prepared. The sheriff's personnel has been trained as well. The federal government has spent about $100 million over the last year just specifically for this kind of training.
What are the odds that we will be going, Chief Allred? You mentioned that you have special trained personnel. I covered the Oklahoma City bombing while working in Tulsa, and shortly thereafter, they were mobilized to go. Obviously, a lot of emergency personnel, we've been hearing initial reports, have been injured in New York. What are the odds that our folks will be going up there?
Well, we don't know. We're going to wait on FEMA, obviously, and the Department of Defense. If, in fact, our folks are needed, as I said earlier, we have about 104 of our personnel who are specially trained. The city has a Metropolitan Medical Strike or Response Team, which is made up of law enforcement, fire and rescue, hospitals, health services. So that make up our medical response team.
So we are on standby.
Well, nobody has said anything, but certainly as a part of, as a commitment to being trained, we have to be willing to respond if we asked to do so.
Typically, they'll get that word out. Basically, they're sort of going, Dave, back to your question. The state typically handles the emergency preparations. Chip, obviously, Chip Patterson is who's been in contact with them. They have phone conferences statewide. We listened in for a good portion of that. Basically, the same decisions are being made statewide as to public buildings, schools, the occasional bomb threat, none of which have appeared credible so far. And then obviously the federal activity. This is a unique one. This is obviously it's an effective declaration of war on the United States, and we'll get some requests for help and directions from the federal government over the course of probably the rest of the day and tomorrow.
Mayor, you were with the president yesterday. You were on Air Force One, as I understand. In retrospect, knowing that this obviously was in a plan that had taken some time, any thoughts that you have about being with the president, knowing that the Pentagon had been targeted, in your mind?
Yeah, I guess I would say this, that the country's in good hands. I was able to spend about 4 hours with the president and the governor, and the very in-touch individual could talk about a wide range of topics with a phenomenal amount of authority, and the country's in good hands. I think we're going to be steered correctly over the course of the next few days.
You mentioned that there were some bomb threats. I mean, are we seeing a lot besides the one at City Hall, or?
You had the one at the South Trust building that was a briefcase that was left. It was not a bomb. And then we had a phone call today at City Hall, said you've got 30 minutes to evacuate the building, and hung up. It would typically be the kind of call that you would ignore. But today's a little different. Yeah, Sheriff, you want to comment?
Yeah, and we did have one other bomb threat that we knew of that we are dealing with. We're not making a big deal out of those because we certainly don't want to encourage it. But I tell you, the citizens of this community have been very calm about all of this. We're not holding many calls in the communication center here. I think we're holding about 10 calls now, which is kind of a typical day. So we certainly don't want to send a message that there's a need to panic here, because it's certainly not.
What are the plans for the next 24 hours? Is the operations center just prepared to continue working for the next day or two at the current level, or?
Yeah, they've raised it to this particular level. Our plan is to meet again at 5 o'clock. We convene representatives from the JEA, Walt Busells is here, the Navy, the school board, all entities that may have to act in the event of an emergency. Typically in Jacksonville, that's the threat of a hurricane. We plan on meeting at 5 o'clock, and if there's a need for further public statement after that, obviously we'll let you know. We'll come on down. In the meantime, clearly, if there's things that come up of more imminence, Chip and Sharon and the other people are here. We want to try to make sure if people have questions, to the extent we can provide an answer or response, that we're available to do it. But I would anticipate that sometime later this afternoon, somewhere between 5 and 6, that maybe we'd be down and give you another update. But I have a feeling we've probably captured it right now.
Is there any guideline or plan for how long the emergency operations center will be up and running right now? I mean, I understand that it's a fluid situation, but
I anticipate that would be the next few days. I anticipate that's the next few days. Okay, anybody else? Again, Council President and the City Council will have a decision somewhere between 2 and 3 on how they're going to proceed with the City Council, and he and the staff will be able to get the word to you. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry it's under these kind of sad circumstances.
Okay, as you just heard, that was Mayor Delaney, the chief of the fire department, also Sheriff Nat Glover, addressing the crowd, addressing the community, really. I think what we're hearing today is, yes, there's heightened security. Yes, there is concern. However, this community does not, and the city government does not want to go ahead and give in to any kind of terrorist opportunity in terms of chaos or confusion or overreacting to the threat. Again, establishing that there have been no threats to the state of Florida. And as you heard Mayor Delaney say that he was with the president yesterday, feels very confident that the president will direct the country in the right direction. Schools remain open. City government buildings remain open, and federal buildings remain open at this time. So I think this is the mayor basically saying that while we are taking this very seriously, we are all here, we all have a plan in place. We are also going to make sure that everybody is safe, but that we're not going to overreact and give in to any kind of terrorist, what they want in terms of chaos and confusion. This is Charlene Shirk reporting live from the Emergency Operations Center. Back to you.
Yeah, some encouraging, in a sense, news on a day in which there's very little encouraging news coming from the EOC, what we call the EOC, and no doubt you're going to be seeing more from that area as we try to bring you information to keep you informed on what's going on. The mayor also added to that every airplane that left JIA today, they have found out has landed safely. Now, not necessarily at its destination, but those of you who may be worried about people who are flying today, every airplane that left JIA has landed safely. Also, we're expecting Governor Bush to talk at 3 o'clock. We're going to try and bring that to you.
We do have some specific information to give you now. Camden County Schools, Dr. Ann Proctor, who's the superintendent, has notified us that if you go to school in Camden County, you will not have school tomorrow. Wednesday, the schools in Camden County are closed, and they'll advise you about Thursday as well.
All right, we also have some information. This comes from the Secretary of Education, Jim Horn. He has now ordered the suspension of all classes at state universities and community colleges today for the remainder of the day and the evening. It's just for today and this evening, nothing yet on tomorrow. But if you attend a state university or community college in the area, you wouldn't want to go today because it's all been suspended. Faculty and non-essential personnel are asked also to leave the campuses. So there's some news on that for you as well.
And there are some personal connections we're just beginning to learn about. There's a woman in Jacksonville whose brother works at the World Trade Center. Of course, she doesn't want to go on the news at this point, but she's not heard from him. There's another gentleman who has some connections up there as well with some friends and clients. And everyone is waiting on news, and it's very slow coming, as you would expect. So as Mayor John Delaney says, and as President Bush says, the prayers go out to those families in this agonizing waiting period. We'll have more news and information for you. We will now return to the network.
All kinds of security briefings.
Linda, I have a question, if I may.
Yes, Peter, go ahead.
I have a question for the Senator. I apologize.
Clearly is a time that, as Tom described, is very close to the beginning of a war, and but the casualties do keep coming in. Burns, smoke inhalation.
This is a News 4 special report.
Good morning, everyone. We know that you're monitoring the situation that is happening across the country right now with terrorism attacks. We do want to let you know what is happening in Arkansas, however.
And then will send you back to NBC News, which is doing continuing coverage of the terrorist attacks in Washington and D.C. But because of what's happened nationally, they have shut down all airports around the country, and that includes Little Rock National Airport and Northwest Regional Airport in Heifel. Now, planes are not allowed to take off, but planes are allowed to come in. And what they have told planes is to just land at whatever airport is close by. So you may see several planes lined up getting ready to land at Little Rock National Airport. Once again, the airport here is closed for outgoing traffic, but planes can come in.
And in addition, the state capitol and the federal courthouse are both right now under heightened states of emergency. Now, people are able to go into work that are supposed to be in the federal courthouse, the federal building here in Little Rock, and also the state capitol. However, they are checking IDs, they are checking security, and they basically have got those buildings under a lockdown situation right now. Also, we do have the emergency management office located in Conway here in Arkansas. They have an underground headquarters. Officials are underground right now, locked down, and they are handling any possible situations that might come up here in Arkansas.
And there are evacuations also in downtown Little Rock. TCBY Tower, we understand from our own Alice Stewart, who is at the scene, has been evacuated, and part of the Stevens building, the employees at the Stevens building who work for Stevens Incorporated have been evacuated, is what a security guard there told us. Other people who work in that building, however, have not been yet.
Also, the Little Rock Air Force Base right now, they are gathering for possible reaction to anything that might happen here in Arkansas, or they could be dispatched to other parts of the country as well.
And we have to stress that this is just reaction to. There has not been anything so far overtly threatened against anything in Little Rock. It's just in reaction to what's happened nationally. Basically, the entire country is now affected, even though the events that took place this morning happened along the East Coast. We will keep you updated throughout the day on what's happening in Arkansas. Be sure to tune in today at 11:55 if you don't see us sooner, and we'll keep you updated then.
Terrorist groups that are capable of this kind of planning, and a couple of names come to mind, and I'm not going to throw them out now because we certainly don't have any reports. Before I go to Jamie Gangel, I just want to say that some of the descriptions coming from eyewitnesses in lower Manhattan of these explosions occurring are chilling. One man talked about getting off a PATH train, that's a subway train, here in lower Manhattan, and looking up at the building after the first explosion and seeing people jump out of the windows. We have no idea how high up, but hearing people on the ground scream each time another person jumped out of a window attempting to get to safety. And then when the second explosion occurred, he felt the heat of the explosion on the back of his neck. Jamie Gangel is our national correspondent. She's joining us now on the phone. Jamie?
Matt, you know, speaking of those intelligence officials that you were just mentioning, now finally we can no longer reach on the phone anyone at the CIA. Apparently the CIA has been evacuated. We know the National Security Agency, which is the electronic eavesdropping agency, which is south of Baltimore near Fort Meade, Maryland, that they have been shut down. What we're hearing
is a News 4 special report.
Good morning once again, everyone. We will take you back to NBC coverage of the disasters going on in New York and Washington, but we want to update you on what is happening in Little Rock based on all of this in response to this. And we want to clarify something we said just a little bit earlier. We had mentioned that the TCBY building in downtown Little Rock was being evacuated. One of our reporters on the scene there had mentioned that. We understand some businesses in the TCBY building have closed and their employees have been asked to leave. Others, however, have not. So the entire building is not closed itself.
And another high-profile building, a private building here in the city of Little Rock, is the Stevens building. Now, Stevens, we understand this morning, Stevens Inc. went ahead and told its employees, go ahead and go home. Of course, trading stopped on all of the markets in the country already this morning anyway. And other offices in the Stevens building, again, it's a case-by-case basis whether or not they want to evacuate. Now, the Deloitte Touche offices are in the Stevens building, and of course, the Deloitte Touche offices were located at the very top of the World Trade Center in New York.
And there's been heightened security around the federal building in Little Rock and the state capitol as well, but so far we don't have any reports of any closures at this time. We do, however, have a report of a closure at Little Rock National Airport, as all airports around the country have been closed. Planes are allowed to come in, no planes are allowed to go out. Let's go to Deanna Durante, who is live at Little Rock National. What can you tell us, Deanna?
Ken, if there is any good news to report today, it's that there have been no problems here at Little Rock National. There is heightened security. Right now, there is a ground stoppage not only at Little Rock, but across the country. The Airport Commission has been meeting this morning to determine what to do. As you can see behind me, we have a number of planes here. Many of these planes were not destined for Little Rock National. When the ground stoppage came out, planes that were in the air were diverted to the closest airport, and that is what has happened here at Little Rock. We have a number of planes that have come in. We haven't seen any planes land in about the past half hour. What they're doing now is they are escorting passengers off the plane as they can. Many are being escorted onto the groundways themselves and being bussed into the terminal. They have shut down the concourse and are only allowing, once it is open, ticketed passengers to go in. They don't know when planes will be able to go back up into the air. The main concern right now is getting the planes on the ground, getting the passengers out safely, and then they plan to, we've been hearing from sources in the airport, going through baggage, doing 100% safety checks, including luggage, planes, searching for any type of dangerous material. Ken?
I came in just about an hour and a half ago, and as I was coming in, Deanna, I saw 4 planes in the air lined up ready to come into Little Rock National Airport. Are planes still landing, and how many are on the ground there now?
We don't know exactly how many planes have landed. As I said earlier, planes, we've seen them come in steadily all morning long, but we haven't seen any land in about the past half hour or so. Right now, any planes that are in the area, if they're near Little Rock National, we can only assume that because the order has gone out to land at the closest airport, that the towers are trying to coordinate all of those flights out there to get them down on the ground and get the passengers out safely. But again, as far as how many are here, where they've all come from, we've spoken with passengers that have been diverted from Washington, Dallas, California, that are all here in Little Rock National.
Deanna, thank you very much. We also want to let everyone know, we had told you yesterday that Governor Huckabee was away at the Southern Governors Conference. They canceled that conference today. However, all of those governors from the southern states are still in Lexington, Kentucky. We just received word that the governor and Janet Huckabee are in Kentucky, and they are going to try to get here as soon as possible, but obviously they cannot fly here, so they're going to have to look at whether or not they're going to wait till air travel is allowed again, or if they're going to try to come by vehicle. In the meantime, Lieutenant Governor Winthrop Paul Rockefeller is at the state capitol, which again is also under a heightened state of emergency.
And we will continue to monitor what is happening here locally and bring you more information as we get it, but we will take you back to NBC News.
One more thing, though, I want to mention, Kent, is that we also received word from Little Rock School District, and that is that classes will continue as normal. I know a lot of people are just concerned at this point. There's no idea of knowing what's going to happen next, but they have increased security at the schools, and the students are safe for now. The principals know what's going on, so school is continuing as normal here in Little Rock.
Full load. Okay, so this now brings to 3 the number of confirmed flights that have been involved in this tragic day. American Airlines Flight 11.
Gaining access. Little Rock Air Force Base, we took you there, under lockdown, gathering its battle staff. Federal Courthouse, where Matt DeCample just spoke, is on heightened state of alert, but business is operating as usual today. The Arkansas Department of Emergency Management in Conway has locked down its underground headquarters. To repeat, though, there have been no threats, but they are there just in case to respond to any event that would occur in Arkansas. State police are putting an emergency plan into action, but they are releasing few details about that. TCBY building has been evacuated. Entergy's nuclear plant in Russellville is operating under a security alert today. Fort Chaffee, Camp Robinson under heightened security. And the Pine Bluff Arsenal is operating also on heightened security alert. We do want to mention one sidebar note. If you live in the Hot Springs area, don't be alarmed. There is some highway construction at a new bypass, which consists of some planned explosions and blasting. And they're asking that we at least let you know about this so you don't panic if you should see one of these explosions. And the location of that is on the east end of the Spa City. Finally, some services are being held today that we want to pass along to let you know that people are going to be gathering in Arkansas to pray for the people in New York and Washington as this tragedy unfolds. Pulaski Heights United Methodist at 4823 Woodlawn in Little Rock is holding a service at 5:30. Park Hill Baptist Church at JFK at C Street in North Little Rock is holding services at 6:30. Westover Hills Presbyterian, 6400 Kavanaugh in Little Rock at 6 p.m. tonight. Trinity Episcopal Cathedral, 310 West 17th, is holding a service at noon in just about 5 minutes. St. Andrew's Catholic at 6711 West Markham is holding a service at 11 p.m. this evening. And St. Luke Methodist, 32 School Street in Pine Bluff is holding a service to remember the folks who are dealing with this tragedy in New York and those who have lost their lives at 7 o'clock. And finally, St. Paul Methodist, 2233 Durwood Road in Little Rock at 6 p.m. this evening. And by the way, St. Andrews has held that at 11 a.m. this morning, I'm told. To recap quickly, the state of Arkansas is safe. No apparent threats made against it today. All air traffic is grounded at Little Rock National for the time being and Northwest Arkansas Regional Airport in Highville. Channel 7 has a full staff. We're monitoring these events locally and will join you throughout the day as the situation warrants. Meantime, we ask you to stay with ABC for the very latest events on this national tragedy unfolding before our very eyes.
President Bush, we took off in Air Force One from Florida, where he first got word of this, and we literally, Peter, have been flying at well over 40,000 feet west. The White House unable to tell us where we were headed or how long.